The clock on my kitchen wall read 12:47 a.m. when I heard it, a soft, desperate scratching at the back door, like an injured animal trying to find shelter. I had been unable to sleep, standing in my nightgown with a cup of chamomile tea growing cold in my hands, staring out at the darkness beyond my window. The sound made my blood run cold. At first, I thought it might be a raccoon or a stray cat. We lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood where nothing ever happened after 9 o'clock. But then I heard something else, a muffled whimper, distinctly human, distinctly familiar. My heart lurched into my throat as I rushed to the door, nearly dropping my mug on the tile floor. When I opened it, my daughter Sarah collapsed across the threshold. She wasn't walking. She was crawling. Her hands were scraped raw, dirt and blood caked under her fingernails. Her face was swollen on one side, her lips split and crusted with dried blood. But it was the way she moved, or couldn't move, that made me understand the true horror of what had happened. Every breath she took came out as a sharp, agonized gasp. Her arms trembled as she tried to pull herself forward, and I could see her entire body was shaking, whether from cold, shock, or pain. I couldn't tell. "Mom," she whispered, and the single word carried more anguish than any scream could have. I dropped to my knees beside her, my hands hovering over her body, afraid to touch her, afraid of causing more pain.
Sarah.
"Oh God, Sarah, what happened? What did he do to you?" I already knew the answer. I had known for months, maybe longer, though Sarah had hidden it well. There had been signs, the way she flinched when her husband Michael moved too quickly, the long sleeves she wore even in summer, the canceled visits and broken promises, the gradual dimming of the light in her eyes. But she had always smiled and insisted everything was fine, and I had wanted so desperately to believe her that I convinced myself I was imagining things. Now there was no more pretending. He found a text she managed between painful breaths. From work. My boss, asking about Monday's schedule. He thought. She couldn't finish. Tears streamed down her bruised face, cutting tracks through the dirt. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run to their house 3 miles away and tear Michael apart with my bare hands. But my daughter needed me now, needed me to be strong and clear-headed. I could fall apart later. "I'm calling 911, I said, already reaching for my phone. "No." Her hand shot out and grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. "Please, Mom. Not yet. I need a minute. I need to breathe." But breathing was clearly excruciating for her. Each inhale was shallow and hitched, each exhale a whimper. I had taken enough first aid courses over the years to recognize the signs: broken ribs, maybe worse. Internal injuries were a possibility I didn't want to consider. "Sarah, you need a hospital. You need help." "I know," she whispered. "I know. Just give me a minute. Please." So I did the only thing I could do. I so carefully, helped her move away from the doorway. I grabbed every pillow and cushion I could find, creating a nest for her on the kitchen floor because moving her to the couch seemed impossible. I covered her with blankets, though I wasn't sure if I should, wasn't sure if I was doing the right thing. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely dial my phone. "Tell me what happened," I said gently once she was as settled as possible. I needed to keep her talking, keep her conscious. Start from the beginning. Sarah closed her eyes, and for a moment, I thought she might pass out. But then she opened them again, and I saw something in them I hadn't seen in years: determination. The Sarah I knew, the strong girl who had once been fearless, was still in there somewhere, buried beneath the fear and pain. "Michael came home from the bar," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "He'd been drinking. He's been drinking so much lately." I was in bed trying to sleep. My phone buzzed with a text from Richard, my manager at the office, just asking if I could cover someone's shift on Monday. Nothing inappropriate, just work. But Michael grabbed my phone before I could even read it. He read the text, and he just exploded. She paused, struggling to breathe, and I wanted to stop her, to tell her she didn't have to relive it right now. But I could see she needed to say it, needed to let it out. He started screaming that I was cheating on him, that I was a whore, that Richard was probably my boyfriend. I tried to explain, tried to show him it was just about work, but he wouldn't listen. He never listens when he's like that. He threw the phone across the room, and it shattered against the wall. Then her voice broke, and she started sobbing, her body convulsing with the force of her tears, each sob sending visible waves of agony through her frame. He grabbed me by the throat and slammed me against the wall. I couldn't breathe, Mom. I really thought he was going to kill me this time. When he finally let go, I fell on the floor, and that's when he started kicking me. In the ribs, in the stomach, everywhere. I curled up and tried to protect myself, but he kept kicking and kicking. I heard something crack, felt something break inside me, and I knew if I stayed there, I wouldn't survive the night. I was crying now too, silent tears streaming down my face as I listened to my daughter describe her attempted murder at the hands of the man who had promised to love and cherish her 7 years ago. The man I had welcomed into our family, the man who had seemed so charming and attentive during their courtship. The man who had slowly, systematically destroyed my daughter's sense of self-worth and safety. When did he stop? I asked. When he passed out, she said flatly. He kicked me until he was too tired and too drunk to continue. Then he just stumbled to bed, started snoring like nothing had happened, like he hadn't just beaten his wife half to death. And you crawled here? She nodded weakly. I waited until I was sure he was asleep. I didn't dare try to leave through the front door, it's too loud, and he's a light sleeper when he hasn't had enough to drink. I went out the back, through the yard. I couldn't walk, Mom. I tried, but my ribs, every step felt like being stabbed. So I crawled. 3 miles. I crawled 3 miles because I knew if I stayed, he'd wake up and finish what he started. 3 miles. My daughter had crawled 3 miles on her hands and knees, with broken ribs and God knows what other injuries, to get to safety.
To get to me.
The thought of it, the image of her dragging herself through the darkness, probably terrified that Michael would wake up and come after her, made me want to vomit. You're safe now, I told her, stroking her hair gently. You're safe, and I'm calling for help. No more waiting. You need medical attention, and we need to document this. All of it. This time she didn't protest. She just nodded, closing her eyes as I dialed 911. As I waited for the operator to pick up, I looked at my daughter, my beautiful, brave daughter who had survived something unimaginable. And I made a silent promise to her and to myself. Michael would never touch her again. Whatever it took, however long it took, I would make sure she was free of him forever. The kitchen light seemed too bright, too harsh for the darkness of what had happened. But maybe that was appropriate. Maybe it was time to bring everything into the light, to stop hiding in the shadows of denial and hope that things would somehow get better. They wouldn't get better. Not unless we fought for it. 911. What's your emergency? The operator's voice came through the phone. I took a deep breath and began to speak. My daughter has been severely beaten by her husband. She has broken ribs and possibly internal injuries. We need an ambulance immediately. As I gave the operator our address and answered her questions, I watched Sarah lying on my kitchen floor, and I felt something shift inside me. Guilt for not seeing it sooner, for not intervening when I first suspected. Rage at Michael for what he'd done. But also determination, fierce, unshakable determination. This was the beginning of something. Not the end of Sarah's suffering. I knew recovery, both physical and emotional, would be a long and difficult road. But it was the beginning of her freedom, and I would be with her every step of the way. The ambulance arrived within 12 minutes, though it felt like hours. I stayed by Sarah's side, holding her hand, talking to her softly to keep her conscious and calm. 2 paramedics, a woman named Jennifer and a man named Marcus, came through the door with practiced efficiency, their faces professional but kind. "Ma'am, can you tell us what happened?" Jennifer asked Sarah gently as Marcus began taking her vital signs. Sarah looked at me, and I could see the shame in her eyes. Even now, even after everything, she felt ashamed. It's what abusers do. They make their victims feel like the abuse is somehow their fault, that they deserve it, that they should be embarrassed by it. Her husband beat her, I said firmly when Sarah hesitated. He beat her severely. She has broken ribs at minimum. She crawled 3 miles to get here. Marcus's jaw tightened, and Jennifer's eyes flashed with something. Anger, perhaps, or recognition. How many times had they responded to calls like this? How many women had they seen in Sarah's situation? "Sarah, we're going to take care of you," Jennifer said, her voice soft but confident. "We need to move you onto the stretcher, and I won't lie to you. It's going to hurt. But we'll be as gentle as we can, okay?" Sarah nodded, and I saw her brace herself. Even that small movement made her wince. They were true to their word. They were as gentle as possible. But Sarah still cried out when they lifted her. The sound of her pain was like a knife through my heart. I followed alongside as they carried her to the ambulance, climbing in beside her when Jennifer gestured for me to join them. The ride to the hospital was a blur of medical jargon and beeping monitors. Sarah drifted in and out of consciousness, which terrified me. But Marcus assured me it was likely a combination of shock, exhaustion, and pain, not necessarily something more sinister. Still, I didn't let go of her hand for a second. At the emergency room, everything moved quickly. A doctor, young, female, with tired eyes that had seen too much, examined Sarah while nurses bustled around, taking blood, hooking up IVs, preparing for X-rays. I stood in the corner, trying to stay out of the way, but refusing to leave the room. "Mrs. Morrison?" the doctor said, turning to me. I realized she thought I was Sarah, and I quickly corrected her. "I'm her mother. Ellen." "Ellen, I'm Dr. Patel. Your daughter has sustained significant injuries. We've confirmed 3 broken ribs, and there's extensive bruising to her chest, abdomen, and back. We're running tests to check for internal bleeding and damage to her organs. The good news is that her vital signs are stable, and she's breathing on her own. But she's going to need to stay here for observation, possibly for several days." "Do what you need to do," I said. "Whatever she needs." Dr. Patel nodded, then hesitated. "Ellen, I need to ask, your daughter's injuries are consistent with severe physical abuse. We're required by law to report this to the police. Is that acceptable to you?" I looked at Sarah, who was watching us with glazed eyes. "Sarah?" I asked. "Is that okay?" She was quiet for a long moment, and I could see the war happening behind her eyes. Fear of Michael. Fear of what would happen if she pressed charges. Fear of the legal system, of having to relive her trauma in front of strangers. But then she nodded slowly. "Yes," she whispered. "Report it." Relief and pride flooded through me. It was a small step, but it was a step forward. Dr. Patel smiled gently at Sarah. "You're very brave. The police will want to speak with you, and we'll also have a forensic nurse come in to document your injuries with photographs. I know this is difficult, but it's important evidence. Is that all right?" Sarah nodded again, and I saw tears slipping down her cheeks once more. I moved to her side, careful not to touch her injured body, and instead stroked her hair. "I'm so proud of you," I whispered. "You're doing the right thing." "Am I?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Mom, what if he comes here? What if he finds me?" It was a legitimate fear. Michael would wake up eventually, and when he discovered Sarah was gone, he would be furious. He would look for her. And the hospital was one of the most obvious places to check. "We'll make sure you're safe," Dr. Patel interjected. "I'm putting a security flag on your room. No visitors except approved family members, and security will be notified to watch for your husband. If he shows up, he won't get anywhere near you." But even as the doctor said it, I could see it wasn't enough to ease Sarah's fear. And honestly, it wasn't enough to ease mine either. I knew Michael, knew his temper, his possessiveness, his ability to be charming and persuasive when it suited him. He could talk his way past security, could lie and manipulate to get what he wanted. "I'm not leaving your side," I told Sarah. "Not for a second. And tomorrow, we're getting a restraining order. We're pressing charges. We're doing everything we can to make sure he can't hurt you again." "He'll be so angry, Mom," Sarah said, her voice small and frightened. "You don't know what he's like when he's angry." "I saw what he's like when he's angry," I said, my voice harder than I intended. I saw what he did to you. And that's exactly why we're not backing down. Sarah, honey, I need you to understand something. This isn't your fault. None of this is your fault. You didn't deserve this. You didn't provoke it. He chose to hurt you, and that choice is on him, not you. She closed her eyes, and more tears leaked out. I kept thinking if I was just better. If I didn't make him mad. If I cooked the right meals, said the right things, dressed the right way. If I was perfect, he wouldn't hurt me anymore. My heart shattered all over again. This was what abuse did. It made victims question themselves, made them think they had any control over their abuser's actions. Made them believe the lie that they were somehow responsible for their own victimization. Sarah, listen to me. You could be perfect, which, by the way, you already are, and he would still find reasons to hurt you. Because this isn't about you. It's about him. It's about his need for control, his anger issues, his violence. You can't fix someone else's broken soul by breaking yourself. Before Sarah could respond, there was a knock on the door. A police officer stepped in, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. Sarah Morrison? She asked, and when Sarah nodded, she continued. I'm Officer Ramirez. The hospital called us about your assault. I need to take your statement when you're feeling up to it. Sarah looked terrified, and I squeezed her hand. It's okay, I told her. Just tell her it happened. Tell her the truth. Over the next hour, Sarah recounted the entire horrific story to Officer Ramirez, who took detailed notes and asked careful, compassionate questions. The forensic nurse arrived and took photographs of every bruise, every cut, every mark on Sarah's body. I had to leave the room for that part, unable to bear seeing the full extent of the damage Michael had inflicted on my daughter. In the hallway, I finally let myself fall apart. I pressed my back against the wall and slid down to the floor, burying my face in my hands as sobs racked my body. A nurse passing by stopped and crouched beside me. First time? She asked gently. What? I looked up at her, confused. First time seeing someone you love after abuse, she clarified. It's always the hardest on the family members. The victims, they've learned to compartmentalize to survive. But for the people who love them, seeing it all at once, it's devastating. She crawled 3 miles, I said, my voice breaking. 3 miles on her hands and knees with broken ribs because she knew he'd kill her if she stayed. The nurse nodded sadly. She's a survivor. And she's lucky to have you. A lot of victims don't have that support system. They go right back because they have nowhere else to go. She's never going back, I said fiercely. Over my dead body does she go back to him. Good, the nurse said, squeezing my shoulder. Hold on to that. She's going to need that strength from you in the days and weeks ahead. It's going to get harder before it gets easier. The legal process, the recovery, the emotional healing, it's all going to be difficult. But if you stand by her, she has a fighting chance. I nodded, wiping my tears away. The nurse was right. This was just the beginning. Sarah would need me to be strong, to be her advocate, to help her navigate everything that was coming. When I returned to the room, Officer Ramirez was finishing up. We're going to his house now to arrest him, she told Sarah. Given the severity of the assault and the evidence we have, he'll be charged with aggravated domestic violence and assault with intent to cause serious bodily injury. These are serious charges, and if convicted, he could face significant prison time. What if he makes bail? Sarah asked, the fear evident in her voice. If he does, there will be conditions, including no contact with you whatsoever. And we can help you get an emergency restraining order first thing in the morning. It won't be a magic shield, but it gives us legal grounds to arrest him immediately if he violates it. After Officer Ramirez left, Sarah was finally taken up to a private room for the night. Dr. Patel had decided to keep her for at least 48 hours for observation, given the severity of her injuries and the risk of complications. I settled into the uncomfortable chair beside her bed, determined to keep my promise not to leave her side. A nurse brought me a blanket and pillow, giving me a sympathetic smile. You should try to sleep, Sarah said quietly. You must be exhausted. I'm not leaving you, I said firmly. Sleep, honey. I'll be right here. She closed her eyes, and within minutes, Exhaustion claimed her. I watched her sleep, watched the rise and fall of her chest, careful, shallow breaths that spoke to the pain she was in even unconscious. As I sat in the darkness, listening to the beeps and hums of the hospital equipment, I thought about how we had gotten here. I replayed the last several years in my mind, looking for the signs I should have seen, the moments I should have intervened. The first time Sarah canceled plans because Michael didn't want her going out without him. The time she showed up with a black eye and claimed she'd walked into a cabinet. The gradual withdrawal from friends and family, the way she became quieter, smaller, less herself. I had suspected. Deep down, I had known something was wrong. But I had wanted to believe her explanations, wanted to respect her privacy as an adult, wanted to avoid confrontation. And in doing so, I had failed her. But I wouldn't fail her again. Starting tomorrow, I would be her fiercest protector, her strongest advocate. We would get through this together, one day at a time, one step at a time. Michael had broken her ribs, but he hadn't broken her spirit. She had survived. She had found the strength to escape, to crawl 3 miles to safety, to ask for help. And that was the beginning of her taking her life back. Dawn broke over the hospital, pale light filtering through the blinds in Sarah's room. I hadn't slept more than an hour, dozing fitfully in the uncomfortable chair, jerking awake every time Sarah made a sound or shifted in her bed. My back ached, my eyes burned, but I didn't care. All that mattered was that Sarah was safe, alive, and beginning the long road to recovery. She woke around 7, her face contorting with pain before she even fully opened her eyes. The painkillers had worn off during the night, and every breath was clearly agony. "Mom," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "I'm here, honey." I stood and moved closer to her bed, careful not to jostle it. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got kicked by a horse," she said, attempting a weak smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Actually, that might hurt less. I'll get the nurse. They can give you more pain medication." Before I could press the call button, there was a knock on the door. Officer Ramirez entered, looking tired but determined. My stomach dropped. This wasn't a social call. "Sarah, Mrs. Morrison," she greeted us. "I wanted to update you on what happened last night." "Did you arrest him?" Sarah asked, and I heard both hope and fear in her voice. Officer Ramirez's expression darkened. "We went to your house around 3 a.m. He wasn't there." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean he wasn't there?" When we arrived, the front door was wide open. Signs of a hasty departure. His truck was gone, clothes pulled from drawers, some personal items missing. A neighbor reported hearing his truck start up and speed off around 2 a.m. He ran, Mrs. Morrison. The moment he woke up and found Sarah gone, he knew exactly what was coming and he ran. Sarah's face went white. "He's out there somewhere. He's going to come looking for me." "We've issued a warrant for his arrest," Officer Ramirez said quickly. "Every officer in the state has his description and photo. We've flagged his truck, his credit cards, everything. We'll find him. But in the meantime, I need you to think, does he have friends or family he might go to? Anywhere he's mentioned wanting to visit? Any place he might hide?" Sarah shook her head helplessly. "His parents are dead. He has a brother in Arizona, but they barely speak. He always said his friends were losers who'd never amount to anything. He isolated us from everyone, officer. I don't know where he'd go." "What about money?" I asked. "Credit cards, bank accounts?" "We monitor those, but if he's smart, he pulled out cash before he left. We're checking with local ATMs, but..." Officer Ramirez trailed off, and we all knew what she wasn't saying. If Michael had prepared, if he'd withdrawn money over time, he could stay hidden for a while. "I want that restraining order," Sarah said, her voice stronger now despite the pain. "And I want to press charges. All of them. I want him prosecuted for everything he's done." Pride swelled in my chest. This was my daughter, the strong, determined woman I'd raised. She was scared, yes, but she wasn't letting that fear paralyze her. "We'll get started on that today," Officer Ramirez promised. "I'm also going to have increased patrols around this hospital and around your mother's house. The moment we find him, you'll be notified." After the officer left, A nurse came in to administer Sarah's pain medication and check her vital signs. Then Dr. Patel arrived for morning rounds. "Good morning, Sarah. How are you feeling?" "Like I lost a fight with a freight train," Sarah said, and I was grateful to hear a hint of her old humor returning. Dr. Patel smiled gently. "The good news is that your test results came back and there's no internal bleeding or organ damage. Your ribs will take about 6 weeks to heal, and you'll need to be very careful during that time. No heavy lifting, no strenuous activity. The pain will be significant for the first few weeks, but we'll send you home with medication to manage that." "Home," Sarah repeated quietly, and I saw fear flicker across her face. She didn't have a home anymore, not one that was safe anyway. "You're coming home with me," I said firmly before she could voice her concerns. "Your old room is still there, and you're staying as long as you need to. Forever, if that's what it takes." "Mom, I can't ask you to." "You're not asking. I'm telling you. You're my daughter, and you're coming home where I can take care of you." Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but this time they weren't tears of pain or fear. They were tears of relief and gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. The rest of the morning was a whirlwind of activity. A victim advocate from the county attorney's office arrived to walk us through the legal process, how to get a protective order, what to expect during the criminal proceedings, resources available for domestic violence survivors. She was patient and thorough, answering every question we had. "The most dangerous time for a domestic violence victim is when they leave," she told us frankly. "Statistics show that's when abusers are most likely to escalate to lethal violence." The fact that Michael has disappeared is concerning. He may be planning, or he may simply be running scared. Either way, you need to take every precaution. She gave us a long list of safety measures, varying our routines, parking in well-lit areas, having our phones charged at all times, installing security systems, alerting friends and neighbors to be watchful. It was overwhelming and terrifying, but necessary. Around noon, my ex-husband Tom arrived. Sarah's father and I had divorced 15 years ago, but we'd maintained a civil relationship for our daughter's sake. When I'd called him that morning to explain what had happened, I'd heard the rage in his voice. Rage at Michael, and probably some at himself for not seeing it sooner, just as I blamed myself. "Sarah Bear," he said, his voice breaking as he approached her bed. He hadn't called her that in years, not since she was a little girl. "Hi, Dad," she said softly. Tom gently took her hand, his eyes roaming over her bruised face, the monitors, the four. I saw his jaw clench, saw him fighting to control his emotions. "I'm sorry," he finally said. "I'm so sorry I didn't know. I should have." "Dad, it's not your fault," Sarah interrupted. "I hid it. I was good at hiding it. He made sure I was good at hiding it." "If I ever find him," Tom said, his voice low and dangerous, "they'll need to arrest me too, because I'll kill him with my bare hands." "Tom," I said warningly, though I understood the sentiment completely. "I mean it, Ellen. What he did to her." His voice broke, and he had to turn away, his shoulders shaking. Sarah started crying too, and suddenly we were all crying, releasing years of tension and fear and unspoken concerns. It was cathartic in a way, this shared grief and rage. When we'd all composed ourselves, Tom pulled up another chair and sat on the opposite side of Sarah's bed for me. "What do you need?" he asked. "Money? Security? A place to stay?" "Whatever you need, Sarah, it's yours." "I'm staying with Mom," Sarah said. "But maybe you could help me get my things from the house? I don't want to go back there, not ever, but I have clothes, documents, some personal items I need." "The police will need to process it as a crime scene first," I reminded her. "But after that, your father and I will get whatever you need. You don't have to set foot in that house again." We spent the rest of the day together, the three of us, united by our love for Sarah and our determination to help her through this. Friends called. Sarah's best friend Maya showed up around 3 with flowers and tears, holding Sarah's hand and promising unwavering support. My sister Carol came by with practical offerings, a new phone to replace the one Michael had destroyed, a notebook to document everything for the legal case, comfortable pajamas and toiletries. As evening approached, the reality of the situation settled over us. Michael was out there somewhere, and none of us would truly feel safe until he was behind bars. But we were together, and Sarah was alive, and for now, that had to be enough. Dr. Patel came by for evening rounds and announced that if Sarah continued to improve overnight, she could be discharged the next morning. The relief on Sarah's face was palpable. She wanted out of this hospital, wanted to start moving forward with her life. That night, as Tom went home to get some rest and the hospital settled into its evening quiet, Sarah and I talked. Really talked, in a way we hadn't in years. "I loved him once," she said quietly, staring at the ceiling. "Or I thought I did. When we first met, he was charming and attentive. He made me feel special, like I was the only person in the world that mattered to him. I didn't realize that was a warning sign, that kind of intense focus." "Abusers are often charismatic," I said gently. "That's how they draw people in." "When did it change?" "I've been trying to remember exactly when he first hit me, but it's all blurred together. There were small things first, criticizing my clothes, getting angry when I spent time with friends, checking my phone. I thought he was just insecure, that if I loved him enough, showed him enough devotion, he'd relax. But it got worse instead of better."
"It always does," I said.
"Abuse is progressive. They test boundaries, see what they can get away with, then push further." "The first time he hit me was about 2 years into our marriage," Sarah continued. "I had gone out for drinks with coworkers after work without telling him first. When I got home, he was furious. He grabbed my arm so hard, he left bruises, shook me, yelled in my face. Then he started crying, said he was so sorry, said he'd thought something had happened to me, that he loved me so much he couldn't bear the thought of losing me. He made it sound like he'd hurt me because he loved me, and stupid me, I believed it." "You weren't stupid," I said firmly. "You were being manipulated by someone who claimed to love you." After that, it happened more and more. He'd hit me, then apologize and shower me with love and gifts. The cycle became predictable. Tension building, explosion, remorse, honeymoon period, then back to tension. I kept thinking each time would be the last time, that he'd finally learned his lesson. But it was never the last time. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, the question that had been haunting me since she'd crawled into my kitchen. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "Shame, mostly. I didn't want you to think I was weak or stupid for staying. And he threatened me, said if I told anyone, he'd kill both me and you. I couldn't risk your safety, Mom. I thought I was protecting you by keeping silent." My heart broke all over again. She had endured years of abuse partially to protect me, never realizing that my greatest pain was watching her suffer and feeling helpless to stop it. "Sarah, I need you to understand something. You are not weak.
You are not stupid.
You survived years of abuse, and that takes incredible strength. Leaving an abuser is dangerous. You knew that instinctively, which is why you stayed as long as you did. But when it came down to life or death, you chose life.
You chose to survive.
That makes you one of the strongest people I know." She turned her head to look at me, tears streaming down her face. "I'm scared, Mom. I'm terrified of what happens next. What if they don't find him? What if he comes back? What if I'm never safe again?" "Then we'll deal with it," I said firmly.
"Together."
"You're not alone in this anymore. You have me, your father, your friends, the police, victim advocates. You have an entire support system now. And yes, you might never feel completely safe again. That's a reality of trauma. But you'll learn to live with it, to manage it, to reclaim your life despite it." "How do you know?" she asked. "Because I know you," I said simply. "You're a fighter, Sarah. You always have been. This is going to be the hardest fight of your life, but I believe in you. And I'll be right beside you every step of the way." She reached out and took my hand, squeezing it gently. "I love you, Mom. I love you too, sweetheart. More than you could ever know." As she drifted off to sleep, her hand still in mine, I made another silent promise. We would get through this. Sarah would heal, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And Michael would face justice for what he'd done. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but we would walk it together, one step at a time, until Sarah found her way back to herself. Dr. Patel discharged Sarah late the next morning with strict instructions for rest and healing. A nurse wheeled her out to the car, hospital policy, despite Sarah's insistence that she could walk, and I drove home carefully, hyper-aware of every bump in the road that might cause her pain. As we pulled into my driveway, I saw that Tom had been busy. Security cameras had been installed at every corner of the house. Motion sensor lights illuminated the yard, and new locks gleamed on the doors. He was waiting on the porch, his face breaking into a relieved smile when he saw us. "Welcome home, Sarah Bear," he said, helping her out of the car with gentle hands. "I've got your room all set up. Fresh sheets, extra pillows for propping up. The doctor said you'd need to sleep elevated for a while. And I stocked the kitchen with all your favorite foods." "Thanks, Dad," Sarah said softly, leaning on him as they walked slowly toward the house. Every step was clearly painful, but she was determined to do it herself. Inside, the house felt like a sanctuary. Tom had thought of everything. Her childhood bedroom had been transformed into a comfortable recovery space with a wedge pillow for sleeping upright, a small table within easy reach stocked with water, medications, and snacks, and even some of her favorite books from her teenage years that I'd kept stored in the attic. "I'll let you two get settled," Tom said after helping Sarah into bed. "But I'm just a phone call away, day or night. Anything you need, anything at all." He kissed Sarah's forehead, squeezed my shoulder, and left quietly. The first few days were difficult. Sarah's pain was intense despite the medication, and the simplest tasks, getting out of bed, using the bathroom, even breathing deeply, required enormous effort. But worse than the physical pain was the emotional trauma that surfaced now that she was safe enough to process it. She had nightmares every night, waking up screaming that Michael was in the room, that he'd found her, that he was going to kill her. I would rush in and hold her, rocking her like I had when she was a little girl, whispering reassurances until her breathing slowed and the terror left her eyes. During the day, unexpected things would trigger her. The sound of a truck engine outside sent her into a panic attack. A knock on the door made her jump and reach for me protectively. Even the shadows on the wall at sunset looked threatening to her trauma-heightened senses. "This is normal," the therapist we'd found told us during their first video session. Dr. Chin specialized in trauma recovery, particularly for domestic violence survivors. "Sarah, what you're experiencing is post-traumatic stress. Your brain is trying to keep you safe by staying hypervigilant, watching for danger everywhere. It's exhausting, I know, but it will get better with time and treatment." "How much time?" Sarah asked, her voice small. "That's different for everyone," Dr. Chin said honestly. "But I can tell you that with consistent therapy, support from loved ones, and possibly some medication to help with anxiety and sleep, most people see significant improvement within 6 months to a year. It's not a linear process. There will be good days and bad days. But you will heal." On the 4th day, Officer Ramirez came by with an update. They'd tracked Michael to a motel 2 states over. He'd been using cash, but he'd gotten careless and used his credit card at a gas station. Local police had arrested him without incident the previous night. "He's in custody?" Sarah asked, and I heard the disbelief in her voice. "He's in custody," Officer Ramirez confirmed. "He's being extradited back here to face charges." Given the severity of the assault and the fact that he fled, the judge denied bail. "He'll remain in jail until trial." Sarah burst into tears of relief this time. "He can't get to me. He really can't get to me." "No, he can't," Officer Ramirez said gently. "You're safe, Sarah. You did the hardest part, you survived, and you spoke up. Now the justice system will do its job." But even with Michael behind bars, Sarah's healing was far from over. The protective order was granted, though it felt almost redundant with him in jail. The criminal case moved forward. The district attorney called to explain that with the evidence they had, Sarah's testimony, the medical records, the forensic photos, the 911 call, they felt confident about getting a conviction. "We're offering him a plea deal," the DA said during a conference call. 15 years in prison in exchange for a guilty plea. If he refuses and we go to trial, we'll be seeking 25 years. "Will I have to testify?" Sarah asked, fear evident in her voice. "If he takes the plea, no. If he forces us to trial, yes. I won't lie to you. Testifying is difficult. His defense attorney will try to discredit you, to make it seem like you're exaggerating or lying. But we'll prepare you thoroughly, and I'll be there to object to any inappropriate questions. And Sarah? Juries are very sympathetic to domestic violence victims, especially when the evidence is as clear as it is in your case. I'll do it if I have to, Sarah said, and I heard the steel in her voice. I won't let him get away with this. Weeks passed, and slowly, incrementally, Sarah began to heal. The physical pain lessened as her ribs mended. She started sleeping a bit better, though nightmares still plagued her. She attended therapy twice a week, sometimes via video, sometimes in person when she felt strong enough to leave the house. She also started reconnecting with the friends she'd lost touch with during her marriage. Maya came by regularly, and soon other friends followed: college roommates, former coworkers, childhood friends who'd never stopped caring even when Sarah had pushed them away. They brought laughter and normalcy back into her life, reminding her of who she was before Michael had tried to break her. One afternoon, about 6 weeks after that terrible midnight, Sarah and I were sitting in the backyard. It was a beautiful autumn day, the kind where the air is crisp and the leaves are just starting to turn. Sarah was moving better now, no longer wincing with every breath, though she still tired easily. "Mom, can I ask you something?" she said suddenly. "Of course. Do you think I'll ever trust anyone again? Ever fall in love again?" I considered the question carefully. Honestly, I don't know. Trauma changes us, sometimes in ways we can't predict. You might find it very difficult to trust, especially in romantic relationships. Or you might surprise yourself. But Sarah, I do know this. You're young, you're resilient, and you have your whole life ahead of you. Right now, the most important relationship you need to focus on is the one with yourself. Learning to trust your own judgment again, to love yourself, to believe you deserve good things. Romance can wait. I wasted 7 years of my life with him, she said bitterly. 7 years I'll never get back. You didn't waste them, I said firmly. You survived them. And everything you learned about resilience, about survival, about your own strength, that's not wasted. That's wisdom earned through the hardest kind of experience. You're not the same person you were when you married him, and thank God for that. You're stronger now, wiser, more aware. Those are gifts, even if they came wrapped in pain. She was quiet for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I'm starting to see that. In therapy, Dr. Chun has me writing down things I'm grateful for each day. At first, I thought it was stupid. What did I have to be grateful for? But then I started noticing things. I'm grateful I survived. I'm grateful for you and Dad. I'm grateful for friends who didn't give up on me. I'm grateful that I found the courage to leave, even if I had to crawl 3 miles to do it. That's good, honey. That's really good. And I'm grateful that I get to start over, she continued, her voice growing stronger. I'm only 32. I have time to build a new life, a better life. A life where I'm not afraid, where I'm not constantly walking on eggshells, where I can be myself. Pride and love swelled in my chest. Yes, you do. And I can't wait to see what you build. 2 months after Sarah came home, Michael's attorney contacted the DA. He was accepting the plea deal. 15 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after serving 85% of his sentence. It wasn't as much as I would have liked, but Sarah was relieved she wouldn't have to testify. 15 years, she said when we got the news. I'll be 47 when he gets out. That seems so far away. It is far away, I assured her. And you'll be a completely different person by then. You'll have built an entire new life. And he'll be a convicted felon with a record of violent assault. His life will be much, much harder than yours. The sentencing hearing was brief, but cathartic. Sarah chose to read a victim impact statement, and I watched with tears streaming down my face as my daughter stood before the court and spoke her truth. Michael Morrison tried to kill me, she said, her voice clear and strong. He beat me, controlled me, isolated me, and terrorized me for years. On the night of September 10th, he kicked me so hard he broke 3 of my ribs, and I truly believed I would die in that house. But I didn't die. I survived. I crawled 3 miles on my hands and knees to get to safety, and every inch of that journey was an act of defiance against the man who tried to break me. I want the court to know that domestic violence isn't just physical. It's psychological, emotional, spiritual. He didn't just break my ribs. He tried to break my sense of self, my belief in my own worth, my hope for a future. But he failed. I'm still here. I'm healing. And I will rebuild my life into something beautiful, something free, something he can never touch again. Your Honor, I ask that you impose the maximum sentence allowed under the plea agreement. Not because I want revenge, but because other women need to be protected from him. Because he needs to understand that there are consequences for violence. And because I need to know that I'm safe, that I can sleep at night without fear that he'll come back to finish what he started. Thank you. There wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. Even the bailiff was wiping away tears. The judge, a stern-looking woman in her 60s, nodded approvingly. Mr. Morrison, she said, turning to Michael, who sat at the defendant's table looking small and pathetic in his orange jumpsuit. I have presided over many cases in my 20 years on this bench, but few have affected me as deeply as this one. What you did to your wife was not an isolated incident born of momentary anger. It was the culmination of years of systematic abuse. You are a danger to women, and you need to be removed from society. I hereby sentence you to 15 years in the state penitentiary, with no possibility of parole before serving at least 85% of your sentence. Additionally, upon your release, you will be required to register as a violent offender, attend mandatory counseling, and comply with a permanent restraining order prohibiting any contact with the victim. If you violate any of these conditions, you will be immediately returned to prison. I hope you use your time in prison to reflect on your actions and become a better person. But mostly, I hope you stay far away from women like Sarah Morrison, who deserve to live their lives free from fear and violence. Michael was led away in handcuffs, and I watched Sarah's face as he disappeared through the door. I expected to see triumph or satisfaction, but instead I saw something more complex. Relief, yes, but also sadness for the years lost, and maybe a touch of pity for the broken man who had caused so much pain. It's over, she whispered, turning to me. It's really over. It's over, I confirmed, pulling her into a careful hug. Now the real work begins, building your new life. The months that followed were transformative. Sarah found a new job, something she loved in a field she'd always been interested in, but Michael had discouraged her from pursuing. She started exercising again, gently at first, but with increasing confidence as her body healed. She went back to school part-time to finish the degree she'd abandoned when she got married. She also became an advocate for other domestic violence survivors. She volunteered at a local shelter, sharing her story with women who were where she'd been, offering hope that escape was possible, that healing was possible. She spoke at community events, raising awareness about the warning signs of abuse and the resources available to victims. I want something good to come from what I went through, she told me one day. If my story can help even one woman leave her abuser before it's too late, then maybe all that pain will have had a purpose. A year after that terrible midnight, Sarah moved into her own apartment. It was small but cheerful, with big windows that let in lots of light and a security system that made us both feel safe. I helped her decorate, and we made it into a space that was entirely hers, no trace of Michael, no reminders of the past, just a fresh start. Are you sure you're ready? I asked as we hung the last picture. I'm ready, Mom, she said with confidence. I love you, and I'm so grateful for everything you've done for me. But I need to prove to myself that I can live independently, that I can take care of myself. This is part of my healing. And she did. She thrived in her new life. Yes, there were still hard days, anniversaries of traumatic events, moments when something triggered a memory or a fear. But they became less frequent, less intense. She dated cautiously, and while some relationships didn't work out, she learned to recognize red flags early and walk away at the first sign of controlling behavior. 2 years after that midnight, Sarah called me with excitement in her voice I hadn't heard in years. Mom, I have news. What is it? I've been offered a position as the director of the county's domestic violence intervention program. It's everything I've been working toward. I'll be overseeing services for survivors, training law enforcement on how to handle domestic violence calls, doing community education. Mom, I'll be able to help so many people. Sarah, that's incredible, I said, tears of joy streaming down my face. I'm so proud of you. None of this would have been possible without you, she said, her own voice thick with emotion. You saved my life that night. You gave me a safe place to heal. You stood by me through everything. I love you so much, Mom. I love you too, sweetheart. And I'm so proud of the woman you've become, the woman you've always been, really. Strong, compassionate, resilient. You saved your own life that night when you chose to crawl out of that house. I just gave you a place to land. Looking back now, 3 years after that terrible midnight when Sarah crawled into my kitchen with broken ribs and a nearly broken spirit, I'm amazed at how far we've both come. The trauma doesn't disappear. It changes you in ways that are permanent. But it doesn't have to define you. It doesn't have to be the end of your story. Sarah is thriving now. She's happy, successful, and surrounded by people who love and respect her. She's in a healthy relationship with a gentle man who treats her like the treasure she is. She's talking about marriage again, but on her own terms in her own time. And me? I learned that you can't protect your children from everything, no matter how much you love them. But you can be there when they need you. You can be their safe harbor in the storm. You can love them through the darkness until they find their way back to the light. Sarah found her light. It took time, courage, therapy, support, and sheer determination, but she found it. And now she's using that light to guide others out of their own darkness. That's the real ending to this story, not the horror of that midnight, but the triumph of every day since. The choice to survive, the decision to heal, the courage to help others, the determination to build a life worth living. Sarah crawled into my kitchen that night broken and terrified. But she walked out of it, eventually, as a survivor, an advocate, and a beacon of hope for everyone who thinks escape is impossible. It's not impossible.
It's hard, yes.
Dangerous, yes. Terrifying, absolutely. But it's not impossible. And that's the message Sarah shares with every woman she encounters through her work. You can survive. You can heal. You can build a beautiful life on the other side of abuse. You just have to take that first step, even if you have to crawl 3 miles to do it.